Welcome, Zenned Math teachers. I'm so excited for today. We have an interview with one of my very good friends, Alice Aspinall. And I know you heard that name because last week we had Alice on to read her book, Everyone Can Learn Math, to our kiddos for a bedtime story. But today's a little bit different. Today is for the adults. We're going to talk a little bit about what Alice does, and we want to get into some math mindsets. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that. Before I bring Alice on, let me tell you a little bit about her. Alice has over 12 years of experience teaching secondary mathematics. She has over 6 years tutoring elementary and secondary as well privately. She has 4 years of teaching elementary math in small groups in schools, as well as, this is a list, oh man, she holds an honor specialist in mathematics, as well as a qualification in special education. And of course, she is the author of one of my favorite children's read alouds books, Everyone Can Learn Math. So let me get Alice on here. Welcome, Alice, to Zenned Math Teachers. Again, I know you were here with us last week. Welcome.
Thanks, Rosalba. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me back. I'm happy to be here.
Of course, of course. I'm so excited to chat with you because now we get to have like an adult conversation. Last week was for the kiddos. This week, I just want to get talking about some ed and all the good stuff that you and I actually talk about separately, but now we're doing it for everybody. Alice, tell us a little bit. I know I just read off all the qualifications, all the years you've had in education, but what got you into ed? Like, why did you decide to get into teaching, and why math in particular?
Well, I knew when I was really young that I wanted to be a teacher. I wasn't quite set on what subject or what I would teach, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I think it was just the helping people aspect of it. My parents held teachers in high regard, like it was a very important and special job to have, and so I think that also played a part into my decision. And then when I was in high school, probably like later high school, grade 11 and 12, I went to a very small high school, and I had a math teacher who I had all throughout high school, and he was very focused on this small class group of kids that he had, and that really influenced my enjoyment of math in the classroom. And that's when I decided to be a math teacher in high school, because then I went on to university and I did a concurrent math and education program, like a combined degree right out of school.
That's awesome. It always takes just that one teacher to turn us, right? Like that one good teacher that's like, oh, I want to do what you're doing.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So you've spent so many years teaching. I mean, secondary, elementary, you kind of dabbled in a lot here. What do you find the most rewarding thing about teaching, either on the secondary level, elementary level?
Yes, so I did a lot of elementary work early on in my career, and actually when I was still getting my degrees, I was already working part-time for a school district in the classrooms, not as like the main teacher, but as like a assistant. But then I was focusing on being a high school teacher, and that's really what I enjoy doing the most, teaching high school level math. Um, like the thing for me is, because I'm all about math mindset, growth mindset. When I can get students coming into high school, for us as grade 9, and they are saying they're not a math person, they can't do math, they've never been good at math, they were never grouped with their regular classmates in a math classroom, and then by the end of the semester they've just changed their minds just a little bit to start to slowly believe that they can do a little bit of math, like maybe they're not an expert at it, but they can do it a little bit, and I've changed their minds and we've worked at it together. That is the best feeling for me. Like, that's what I live for. And it's like, it can be such a small improvement, because like what I stress all the time is I'm not looking to make every kid a math expert. They're not all going to be in the 90s here. Like, we're not all going to get A's. I know that, but if you could go from a failing grade to like a little bit better, that makes them feel like they're world. That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
It makes me really happy.
I totally am on the same page with you. I love it, that same feeling, not just with students, but with teachers. I mean, when teachers have that moment where it's like, oh, I actually kind of like this, that's my favorite thing. And parents as
Mm-hmm.
well, right? Because that negative mindset really is in it's kind of the whole spectrum. It's the parents, sometimes it's ed leaders like admin and things like that, sometimes it's teachers, and definitely the students. I love all your work in kind of tackling that negative math mindset. And I know we'll talk about your book in a second, but what are some strategies that you have for teachers that want to address kind of that negative mindset that oftentimes they see in rooms?
My opinion is that you have to hit it like head on and be really excited about what we're doing at all times. So students are coming in with a really negative mindset toward math. I'm talking about it with them on the first day of the semester. My first question to my students on the very first day is, how do you feel about math? We do, I've talked about this on at different places before, but we do a snowball. Do you know what a snowball is?
No, tell us a little bit about that.
So, so I put the question on the board, how do you feel about math? Anonymously, I ask them to write out how they feel about math. I have to ask them to keep it sort of PG because, like sometimes they have some strong feelings about math, so they won't have some choice words. So, you know, school appropriate, how do you feel about math? Anonymously. Then we crumple it up into a snowball and on 3, we toss it across the room, all, up into the air. And everybody picks one up off the floor and we open them back up. And so you're reading someone's randomly. And then we read them all out loud. We don't know who said what. And we share everybody's thoughts. And if, depending on the classroom of students, you can get a lot of really negative things going about their feelings with math, right? So we talk about that. We talk about why, where has that come from? And it's hard in grade 9 to change those minds at that point. Like that stuff's been engraved in them for years and years and years. Sadly, like as young as, like Joe Buller says, as young as 5, math anxiety begins, right? So it's not easy to do, and it's hard for them to believe that they are kids who can do math. So we read them anyway. I'll go back. We read them all out loud, and we start to talk about how math's going to look different in our classroom. What are we going to do? What activities are we going to do? So it's not just textbook work and repetitive questions over and over again. Why is this classroom going to look more like a science class instead of your traditional math classroom? And we build up this sort of anticipation for something that's going to look a little bit different than they might be used to, which then opens the door to maybe a different reaction than what they normally have to math. And we work on that. And I take it back full circle because on the last day of school, with the exception of this last semester, because we were all at home, we do the same activity again. And what they don't know is that I've saved all of their responses. So I read the responses from the beginning of the school year, and then we do it again, and we listen to the new responses. And sometimes they haven't changed, but often they're like a little bit better.
I love
So
that.
that's like my number one activity in grade 9. Yeah.
I love that you go back and you save them. That's like honestly amazing because they can kind of. I also love that everybody gets to kind of do it and read it anonymously because I'm sure they see some commonality there, right? There's more kids with math anxiety than not, most likely. So they kind of don't feel alone in that feeling. But then, the shift that happens throughout the year, they kind of also don't feel alone in that either, where they start growing or feeling as if they're mathematicians. I really, really, really love that you go back to the same thing at the end and kind of compare, their thoughts and feelings on it. That's such a great idea. Teachers, you better take that on. This is a good starter activity for sure. Alice, did this lead you to? Right, because you're right. I mean, it is hard to undo it's really unlearning the learned, right? They were kind of conditioned to get math anxiety with some ed systems that are in place that produce math anxiety. It's very hard to undo. It is possible, but it is hard to undo as they get older. So we really have to tackle it early on, right? Right away. Is that what led you to write the book, or was it for a different reason? Because I know the book is geared towards little guys, right? So, what led you to take that on?
Yes, so the book is a children's book. So obviously we're talking about young learners, and my my research into growth mindset at the high school level started, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. I started
Yeah.
looking at Joe Bowler's work and reading all of that research. I had done some presentations for staff at my school on some books that I had read. And then, I have young children at home. I have 2 young children. So I'm always trying to do fun math activities with them. I have friends with young children too. So they started to ask me, what can we do to make sure that my kids don't hate math like I hate math, for example? So I did one day. I did what I usually do whenever there's a new issue that we're trying to work through in our house. We go to books because we love books. Like the potty training books, or you're going to be a big sister book, right? Like this is what we do. So I went looking for a mindset book for math, specific to math. And there are tons of really great growth mindset books out there, but not specific to math. They're just like in general, right? So I went looking for one and I couldn't find one. This was now over 2 years ago. And so that's where the journey to write that book and create that book began. And I thought at the time that it was going to be like an easy thing to do, but I was really wrong. But it was, I did it and I'm really proud of it. And it's like my baby, so much work went into it. And still it's an ongoing, right? Like my whole platform and what I'm putting out into the world is all based on the ideas in this book. So it's an ongoing project.
Yeah, and I mean, that book, we talked a while back, and I know I reached out to you when I found that book, and I had the same feeling like, oh, there's something out here with about mindset and about math. This is it was needed, right? And there are great things out there, but this specifically, that it's geared towards math, was something that I was so happy to see. And I remember, Alice, I reached out to you a while back and I was like, I travel to schools and I give PD. I just want to give your book. I want to raffle it off at every single school that I go to. And I've done that, which has been great. Just to get it into classrooms, or maybe if the teacher wants to bring it home to their kids, that's cool too. But I really, believe in what you put out, because it's stories that it's a story that needs to be told. It's a story that parents also need to hear. It's not just about the kiddos, but parents reading that to their kids is a big deal. So I love that. Do you have any other projects lined up? I know you had written the one book. Do you have anything? Um, is there another book coming? Or I know.
There is. Yeah, there is. Yes, I'm working on one now with my publisher. It won't be out until the springtime probably.
Okay.
But it's a little bit different. So there's a little bit more math in it, and it's called Let's Explore Math. Same characters, and we still have the doubtful Amy, doubting her math ability, and she has her same friends, with an addition of a couple more, cheering her on and helping her through problems. But there's a bit more math. It's a bit more mathy now, and focusing a bit on some brain breaks too, because I didn't tackle that in the first book. Because I couldn't do everything, in one story. So a little bit of a different angle, but same characters, same type of idea, and I'm working hard on that right now. And I'm really
I
looking forward
love
to it.
that. I love that. You got a little series in your hand already. That's awesome. I get first dibs when you get that out there. I'm just saying.
Oh, you bet, Rosalba. And I remember when you reached out to me. That was over a year ago now,
Hmm.
and I didn't know you. You didn't know me, and now we've developed this friendship. And I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. And also, like when when you become an author, and it's hard to even call myself an author, even still. The book's been out almost 2 years, and I still
Yeah, you
sometimes don't
are
think
an
of myself as an
author.
author. But so when you reached out to me, that's just like that's reinforcing the message and my work and all of the time I've spent on this. So I was so grateful for that, and that was just a big moment in this whole journey for me. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. And see, we have, I know not everyone knows, but well, by now you picked it up, but we have such a great friendship outside of this, just supporting each other. And that's why I want first dibs on the next book. So,
You
um,
got it. You got it.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about you had mentioned your publisher, and recently you worked on an article. I put it on in the Facebook group, so I can link that below as well for Edu Match Publishing. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that because, as you know, I mean, you tackle two things that are near and dear to my heart. One is math mindset, right? So with your children's book, you touch on that piece. And then your article was, you were talking about race. And if you've been a part of this Zenned Math group, I talk about that. So I loved your article so much. But for those of us who did not read it, can you share a little bit about it? I will link it. So I do think everybody needs to kind of check that out. But I'd love, Alice, for you to share a little bit about that article.
Yes, so I wrote a blog post for EduMatch Publishing a couple weeks ago. It was called "What Does Race Have to Do with Math?" And it was sort of an eye-opening piece or call to action for especially white teachers to think about our Black and students of color in our classrooms, and why why the numbers don't show that they take higher level math. They don't pursue higher level math classes in high school, and why they're often streamed at lower level math classes. And so I'm certainly not an expert, but in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement and how it's been brought to the forefront of all of our minds after the George Floyd um, murder, you know, this is something that we all have to be thinking about and learning how to undo this racism in our classes, right, in our education system. So that's really what it was about. Um, I had a lot of people proofread that piece. That was probably the most work I've spent on a blog post ever. You were one of the people who proofread it for me, including a couple of other white educators and a couple of Black educators, all friends of mine who I really wanted to hear other people's opinions before I put that out to make sure that it was giving the message that I was looking for, because I know I'm a white woman and I don't know everything there is to know, and I will never know. But I really wanted to address this at this time because I felt like that was the only thing I could write about in the moment. Like it was the most important thing that I could think to write about. So I reference a lot of articles, and I think like the most important part of the piece is to read the articles I reference, because a lot of them are written by Black educators. A lot are female educators, which I also think is super important. So if you're scanning through that blog post and do nothing but read the things I link to, that is like super important, I think, to do. You want to read those linked articles from those voices who know way more than me about the topic.
But you know what, Alice? I love that you're saying, but I kind of want to talk about that. So I'm going to push a little bit. I know you
Of course you
mentioned,
are.
all my friends know what I'm like. I'm going to challenge that a little bit. I'm going to push a little bit. Now, I'm not really going to
Yeah.
challenge. I understand that you said, I'm not an expert in it. And there's people that have more information on it for sure. But but I try to get across something. We have to say something. And I think that what you did by writing this blog post was a big deal. And here's why. We have been sitting on this information, right? With, we're talking about culturally responsive teaching and diversity and equity, and obviously all the inequities in the ed system. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of um, there's a lot of Instagram posts and supporting Black Lives Matter, 100%. What I love is that you used your voice and your platform, right, to bring this to light to all the people that follow you, which I'm sure, are a lot of white educators, because primarily the field is white educators, right? So when we talk about allyship and when we talk about advocating and amplifying, that is what you're doing. So I know that you said, I'm not an expert, but the fact that you took your platform and highlighted some, even what you're saying now, this is why I'm so in love with you, because you're saying, even if you don't read the article, check out the articles that I reference from these other people. That is a big deal. You're amplifying other voices. And I mean, the piece is well written. I mean, I really think everybody, again, I'm linking it and everybody should read it if you haven't already. But I do love that you put yourself out there like that. On a side note, I see a lot of people with the Facebook posts and the this and the that, but no action behind it. And I love that there was action behind this. You used your voice to kind of write this piece, to even share it. I know you had mentioned, you had some other educators, including myself, kind of look at it so we can look at the ideas behind it, that collaborativeness. Like, I I love that piece. I love that piece. So I'm really I'm just glad. And I'm not saying this because I'm your friend. I really am glad that you took that step. And I hope more people will kind of do the same in using their platforms to do things like this. So that was a side note. So you're probably like, what are you talking about this for? But it's really more for the audience. I really hope that it kind of pushes everybody to look into this and to take some action. Take some action, right? So I'm glad that you put that out there. Again, I'm going to link it. So I didn't really challenge you. I was actually saying good things, Alice. So I know sometimes when my buddies are like, oh, shoot, here she goes again. So, all right. So,
There's a lot of
go ahead.
stuff. There are a lot of good articles in there that people should read, especially the one, what anti-racist teachers do differently, that talks about the relationships with students and how we need to trust one another, and it's a back and forth and a team effort and not a teacher versus student kind of relationship. That really speaks volumes to me. So I think that's a really good one in there.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, guys, definitely check that out. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I know it has already been posted and some people shared some comments. I mean, a lot of people love that article or that blog post, Alice. I know right away when we posted, there were some comments on it, but if you have not checked it out, please do so. So, Alice, what else? You have the book, right? The new book is going to come out next year that I get first dibs on, and you have your blog posts that you write. I know you're on other social media platforms. You are on Instagram and Facebook. We'll have all the links for this in the comments. Anything else that you have going on that people should be aware of? Or different places they can check out your stuff?
Yes, so I would love for everybody to follow me on your favorite social media, because I put out, I won't say daily, but often I put out ideas on how to get math conversations started with your young children. So I like to find math in all of like weird, strange, unusual places that people don't usually think carry a lot of math in them, but they do. Like, math is everywhere around us, and it's just so easy to bring up a math conversation with your child and remind them, or not remind them, but get them realizing that math is all around us and not just a singular subject we learn when we go to school, right? It's a part of our lives right from the day we're born and onward. And so if kids can really appreciate that math is a fun thing to talk about and discover, then when they go to school, maybe they'll be a little bit more open-minded, and we don't have to have this math anxiety begin with them at such a young age that we're seeing, right? So I post a lot of ideas. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I also have a new YouTube channel where I'm doing a reading of my book. So it's all over. If if you don't want to purchase it, you can see it for free and share it. So please do that, because it's all about spreading the message and the math love, as I like to say. So there are lots of ways to spread that message and get our kids thinking about math. So check out all of my social posts, and you'll see that I find math in all the strangest places sometimes.
Yeah, we'll link all of that below. I love that though. You do find it in the strangest places, which is great because it piques their interest. Like you said, they're not going into school and seeing it as an isolated, right, a silo, just a separate subject that's
Yes, like
boring. They
now we're going to learn. Yeah,
exactly. You kind of pique
right.
their
Like now we're going to
interest.
learn about math.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. And I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning with my high school students. I'm explicit about how we are working on our growth mindsets. And with our children, we should be explicit and tell them, hey, we're doing math right now. Did you know that this is math? Like yesterday, my daughter found an old math set that I had with like a compass and a protractor in it, and she said, can I play with this? And I said, sure. And she started drawing circles and triangles and tracing the protractor, like half circles, and putting things together and making mountains. And it was just an art piece to her. But like, let's call it what it is. Look at the math you've done here, right? Like, if we keep just reinforcing that idea that we're doing math, this is math and this is fun, then imagine what a world of difference, how our kids will grow up as a generation of kids who love math instead of hate math.
Yeah, absolutely. Girl, I'm definitely on board with that for sure. I love too that it's great for parents. All the stuff that you post, it's not just an education, an educator thing. I mean, it's great for teachers as well, but for parents to kind of see how things in their environment can turn into these math lessons without you even knowing it. So for teachers, I know this is a platform for teachers, but I definitely would share these social media platforms with parents as well so they can follow Alice, because these are great. I mean, it is in most random places, but that's what it is. Math is all around us. It's everywhere. So, Alice, you do a great job in finding that, showing it. And like I said, educators, pass that on to parents, because I think that will also let them find some interest in it as well, because they grew up with it being an isolated subject. So if you can show even them something different, we can work on that parent growth mindset as well, subliminally, right? Without telling them, they'll just see the stuff. So,
And then maybe when they come to me in grade 9, then we won't have to undo so much hatred for
yeah,
math in the way that we do. And
that's
I talked about that one snowball activity, but really, like, we do a week's worth of growth mindset activities through U Cubed, Joe Buller's and Stanford University's website, with all of those growth mindset videos and activities. We do that for a week, trying to get our students ready to embrace math and learn math, right? So it's a lot of effort, and like a lot of deliberate effort on our part to try to get our students to embrace math again at the high school level. But imagine if we were doing it when they were 3 and 4 and 5,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's definitely when we need to hit it. And that's something I talk about in my membership, to your point, that it's ongoing. It's not a one and done activity, talking about growth mindset and then it's like, oh, okay, let's put this aside. We did a lesson on it. It really has to kind of be tackled throughout, throughout your year. It's not a one and done thing. So I'm glad that you brought that up too. I talk about that a lot in my membership site, because we're not done. One lesson doesn't mean we're done. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Alice, I know I've kept you for long, but I actually, you know what? I want to, I always do this for interviews. I don't know, it's so cheesy, but it's like my favorite thing. Um, so everyone knows this is Zenned Math, and I really, as riled up and angsty and everything math rebellious that I get, I always try to bring it down to a place of Zen, right? Because Zen is all about the simplicity. And when I work with teachers and coaching and things like that, I really just bring it down to the core. Because life is like, education's muddled with all this extra. So, one thing that I always say is, I don't even remember where this quote is from, but I bring it up in a lot of interviews. A quote that is subtract the obvious and add the meaningful, right? And I like to bring that up to the people that I'm talking to because I think that fits very nice. First of all, it's mathy, right? Because it's subtract the obvious and add the
That's,
meaningful, so it
I,
makes sense.
I like it.
But also I love thinking about how that fits into education, right? So, Alice, in your opinion, right, what would be the obvious thing in ed that we should subtract, that we should just eliminate? And what piece do you think we should add or put more emphasis in, right? The meaningful part. So, if you were to choose what we can subtract that's obvious and what we could add that's meaningful, what would that be?
I'm going to go a little like cliche. Can I go a little cliche
Do
here?
it.
So I
Do
think
it.
the obvious answer for the obvious thing that we would eliminate would be the constant grading that happens in school, right? Assigning a grade to everything, and allowing more opportunity for just enjoyable learning, just learning for the sake of learning, because it makes you a better person and stronger mentally, right? So, uh, and there, and that's a really tough thing to say because we are bound by the need to grade. So that's easier said than done, right? As a teacher, I know that we can't do away with grades, unfortunately, but we can try to work to emphasize them less in the classroom so that it's not always like we're working towards a grade. Like at the beginning of my career, I feel like my students would always ask, is this for a mark? Is this for a grade? Does this count? Do I have to do this for my grade, right? And I feel like now I don't remember the last time I heard that question from students. Because if you stop focusing on, if you do this, you'll get this mark, and if you do this, you'll get this mark, then you can just sort of say, now look at how much you've learned here. Look at how you didn't used to be able to do this, but now you can, and really put an appreciation on the learning rather than the outcome of this performance. Oh, it's always like a performance, right?
Yeah, and and it's not cliche. I love that you added that, but yeah, I mean, they actually see themselves as that grade, right? They're like, I'm a 70 student, I'm a C student. So when we kind of detach them from that mentality, they can start appreciating the math. They can start appreciating, right, the learning. So I'm totally on board. I agree with you. We can't like banish them, but for sure there should be some reform around that. And admins, I know there are admins in here. If you're listening, this is something to bring back, right? Because we know that it's good, or it would be better for the ed system if we shifted. But there's sometimes we get stuck in that status quo, and we don't, you know, we don't push back enough on these types of things. So I always add this piece, hopefully, or to hopefully have some educator go back and be like, well, I heard Alice in this interview say grading should be looked at. Let's talk about it. And I talk about all the, I hope that an educator listening just kind of takes some piece of this away, because we know that there are changes to be made, but changes are made through action. So, we have to push. So it is not cliche. I agree with you. I think there has to be something done around there. And the meaningful piece being that there's more emphasis on what they're actually doing, what they're learning. And it's all about having them feel like mathematicians. At the end of the day, they are mathematicians. We just need them to feel that and to embrace that. So,
They are, and every student's level of success is different from another. Like,
mhm.
I'm going to tell one more story. Can I tell one more story?
Yeah, go for it, girl. We're just hanging
Okay.
out.
Okay. One more story. I will always remember one student I had in grade 9, a female student who told me she never passed a math class. Now I'm in Ontario, so you can make it to high school and not get passing grades, but still go on to the next grade. Like you'll still move on to the next. They don't hold you back
Oh,
in
okay.
grades. So you can be at like a level 4 math and still be in grade 8 and still go to grade 9.
Okay.
That's just how the system works. And then you get to high school and you need a passing grade to get the credit, and then you can be held back. But in grade school, you don't really get held back. So she told me she had never passed a math strand, because they're in strands.
Okay.
Never in her whole life. She was always in the lower level math classes. She left a classroom to go to like another small group
Like
to
intervention.
do math.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, yeah. And now she was in grade 9 with the rest of her peers, because that's how it works. Now she's in this streamed grade 9 class. That student just passed my class. She just passed. Her parents were thrilled. She was thrilled because, when she compared that mark to other students, that it was not a good mark, right? Compared to other students, she said this is not as good as, others. But for her, if we just look at her success, that was the best she had ever done in math. Like, what a success story for that in particular, like that student in particular, right? And that's what it's about. Like, we need to forget about, like, you need to meet this standard of a grade and think about each student as an individual, because that to me was like such a great moment to her.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about growth. And I'm sure the parents had that same feeling, right? I mean, it's a household event when there's a shift like that happens. And think about how motivating that is for her getting into the next school year, right? I mean, I'm sure will go into it with a feeling of, I can do this. I can do this. I love that. That is such a nice story. Isn't that the goal? That is the end goal for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you shared that. Um, well, I know I have been keeping you for a long time, so I don't want to hold you up too much longer. But Alice, I hope that you can come back on here. You definitely have to come back when that new book comes out, for sure. But hopefully we can do some other events on here and just collaborate a little bit more. I know that you do a lot of different math activities on the social media platforms. So teachers, please check those out. Everything that we talked about today, I'm going to be linking in the comments. So please click on them. Alice, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And we will hopefully see you again soon.
Thanks, Rosalba. It was great to be here. Thanks, everybody. I hope I'll come back very soon.
Very soon. Definitely, girl. All right, guys. That's it for Zenned Math. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you're watching the replay, make sure you check out the comments so you can get all the stuff that we chatted about. All right, everyone. Have a great day.